welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on. So I always ask my guests, are you well actually?
Am I well actually? Well, that's a big question. And thank you for having me.
Oh.
So am I well? Yes, I am actually. And I would say it's been a long journey of being in relationship with my wellness. And I've also been in phases in my earlier life where I wasn't. And wellness is also an ongoing process. I don't think you're ever done. I think as long as we live in this human world, in this existence, where there's a lot of conditions and programming that our wellness should be outside of us, it takes consistent commitment to unpack sometimes and change the stories that, you know, and quite honestly, that profits from us being unwell, so that we are questioning ourselves or we are not knowing our worth, so that we will buy these things or do these things that keep us in a state of disempowerment. So I feel like wellness is so much around unpacking some of the systems that we live in, the organizations that we live in, to really reclaim our personal power and our wellness from the inside out. And that has been my journey for the last, I would say, 35 years.
Amazing. And can you touched a little bit on how you weren't always well. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe things you did before, and then can you talk us a little through your journey from, say, 35 years ago to now, in as much or as little detail as you like?
Well, that's be a really long time. How much time do y'all have? Okay, so I would like to say, so I'm going to start it this way. I was born, as most of us are, whole and well, and in my light, my whatever you want to call that, my relationship to myself is being intact. And, you know, living in this human life and the conditions and the cultures and the time frame that we grew up and being exposed to all the things we are, then we start to separate from that wholeness. And none of it is bad or wrong. Like, I really recognize that as I've gotten older, that when I was maybe, I think 12 or 13, I'm writing about this in a book that I'm writing right now, where I started to, maybe even earlier, look at myself as broken, or something was wrong, or I'm not enough. The not enoughness starts. And that is something that I didn't experience when I was younger, that it starts to seep in a lot of different ways, as I think we all know.
Yeah. And
there's a particular story in the book where I started dating my boyfriend when I was 13, pretty young, but you know, that's the way it goes. And I was with him from like 13 to 18, and I loved my boyfriend. And I remember having these big emotional like explosions. And one time I actually kicked a hole in the bathroom door because I was so angry. And my boyfriend loved me and he never did anything to hurt me or cheat on me, like none of that. But it was such this overwhelm of emotion. And I remember thinking like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I remember my mom even saying, I don't know what's going on here, because, you know, my mom and dad were still together. Nobody had betrayed anyone. So it was really a mind fuck. Is it okay if I cuss?
Of course, you must.
I'm going to.
I insist.
Because logically and rationally, there was no explanation for this surge of rage and emotions of betrayal and abandonment. So I really got on the train of, I need to figure some of this shit out. This is going to be part of my journey. And what I did learn in my own way, and I think I even understood that this was something deeper than I could understand. It was something I was carrying in my belief system. And as much as my mom and dad had given me this, you know, childhood that was relatively, you know, balanced and healthy and good, my mom had a lot of pain and trauma and abandonment that I knew nothing about. She sheltered me and shielded me from that abandonment, which was heavy. I mean, she was abandoned by her father, her mother. She grew up in a convent for a few years, so she was abused, and she came out the other side, and she didn't want me to be exposed to any of that. And yet, energetically, I would see her abandon herself and go into this almost like a time travel trance of where I remember thinking like a 5-year-old that doesn't. She was dysregulated, and she didn't know how to soothe herself. I would watch this, and as I got older, I was like, oh, I'm now understanding. I'm abandoning myself because I saw my mother leave herself, and who was there to take care of me? None of this makes her bad or wrong. She just didn't know how to heal her trauma. So as I learned to understand that, it gave me more, not evidence, but awareness that trauma and pain is not something that moves in linear time. It time travels, and when we heal and work with our own pain and wounds, not only do we heal ourselves, we help heal the past, and we help heal what's come in front of us. It is such an important part of, like my teacher said, if we want visible peace in the world, we really have to heal our invisible warfare. So I really started on that journey of like, girl, you got some invisible warfare that you got to go heal.
And that's Mona Miller, isn't it? Could you tell us a little bit? Because I found her through you, and I have that book, and I've worked through it in part, and it's incredible. And I think there's maybe especially in the UK, not many people know about Mona's work. Could you tell us a little bit about Mona and what she does?
Yeah. So what she did. So Mona, I came to Mona's work because I started studying psychology. It was really something important to me, and I went to UCLA and I studied psychology, and my degrees in psychology, and I started therapy quite young. And I do feel like in California it's not stigmatized. It's like everybody has a therapist.
Yeah, in America maybe in general, I think it's a lot more common for people to have a therapist.
Yeah, because I always believe we do all of this work in academia to develop our intellectual capacity. I'm like, yeah, but our emotions are running the boat. So we better figure this out. And we all have blind spots, and most of our families have secrets and things that weren't healed. And like, let's get honest. Like, to me, wellness is wholeness, and wholeness is authenticity, and authenticity is integration. So if we're denying our hurts and our wounds and calling it bad, we are living in shame, and shame will shut us down from growth. And we're going to live only in parts of who we are. And that is detrimental to how we develop. So that was something I came on to quite young. But then as I was in therapy, for me personally, intellectually, I got so much. Like, I could identify this is the what, and this is the problem. And I was like, okay, I get it. Now what? Like, I still have these shitty thoughts. I still have this low self-worth. I get I'm making the associations and the connections, but something's not changing. So kind of fast forward, I then at the time was in a relationship with somebody who was an addict, and I'm not. I wasn't a using addict. Don't do drugs. I didn't even really drink at all at that time, but my boyfriend did, and he was sober. So our relationship was quite stormy. It's probably not news to anyone out there. Like, you know, sometimes with stormy relationships, but it was also passionate. There was like beautiful stuff around it, but we were having issues. So I started seeing Mona with my ex-boyfriend, and his dad and his brother were also seeing Mona, and she was just such a gift. Her background, she was a coach. She wasn't a therapist, and she was really able to help us understand the pain and the sadness and the wounding that we all had in our own unique way, without zero judgment, zero shame. The thing that I learned with her the most was how to rinse what I was feeling, to give it worth. It isn't necessarily the truth, but what I'm feeling at that moment is real and true. And my animal body needed to release where it was being held without judgment or shame. So there was right rinsing and physical rinsing.
So tell us a little bit about those.
Physical rinsing feels really weird for most people, and it did for me. And that's kind of the point. It's not supposed to feel comfortable, and it's you can take like a side of a bed or a pillow, and she had actually these boppers, but you could take a tennis racket. And without going into detail, you hit. And your body has this release, but you want to use your words. And the idea is, if you thought it, you felt it. And if you felt it, it has an energy. And once the energy is alive, it's like you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can suffocate it, you can suppress it. But some of the stuff that we're feeling, we don't want to feel, so we shut it down, and that hence gives birth to a lot of addiction and addict energy. Because look, I'm feeling this shitty feeling, and I don't want to feel bad. I want to feel good. There's nothing wrong with that. But oftentimes the feel good is to deny or avoid the bad. So you can go to that sense of high, whatever it is, like drugs, alcohol, sex with inappropriate partners, working too much, working out too much, like the things. So this was giving space for all of the upsetting feelings and thoughts and even memories that were being buried, to have a safe place without judgment to move and rinse. And, you could say, fuck you, and I'm so angry, and I'm so sad, and I'm so hurt, and letting your feelings and thoughts move in present time that were being buried. So all of the discomfort and upset had a place to just to rinse, to release. And then with that, well, that's part of it. But then also with that, the processing of like, okay, I need to also, the process part is the repair. What is this revealing to me in my own blind spots, or maybe where I wasn't parented, or where I wasn't held. And this is where I'm not holding myself. So this relationship, whatever the thing is that's triggering me or bringing my stuff up, is where I get to repair how I hold myself and set boundaries. And boundaries are, I know it's sort of a key word these days, but boundaries have been something I've been working on for 30 years, because boundaries are love. They're not walls. They're where I'm learning to hold myself in a safe space, to give worth to what I'm feeling, to process the truth of what I need to repair within myself, because I can't change anybody else, but I do need to repair and often reparent. Like I said, like my little girl was like, well, who's parenting me right now? Because somebody has left the building. So energetically, I would abandon myself in relationships. So I had to stay present and connect and soothe myself. There's something so important about that repair of self-soothing, so that I could take ownership and be accountable of how I was holding myself in relationship with everybody around me.
And what would be some ways that you would self-soothe? Like, what would be a healthy self-soothe? Like, what's something that you would do, or that you would have someone else do to self-soothe?
Well, I mean, I think, and so there's that physical rinse that I just explained,
course, yeah.
But there's also writing. Writing is such a fantastic tool, and not the sense of writing of, like Dear Diary, which there's that, you can do that, but really letting all your thoughts and feelings have a way to move. And if you're in a trigger and you're feeling judgy or upset, sometimes it helps to write out what you're seeing in that person or that thing. Something that can be triggering for me is the patriarchy. Like when that patriarchy shit comes up, I'm like, oh man, it can bring up my fierce bitch, and that isn't going to change anything, but I have to give my fierce bitch some places to rinse. I'm like, fuck the patriarchy, and when I look at you I see, and when I look at you I feel. So I write that out, then I take a deep breath, and this soothe, I flip it. And I flip it, and it helps me see where the patriarchy is living within myself, and where I'm oppressing myself. And there's something soothing, because I can now reflect back, well, ooh, girl, you're feeling hurt, or you're not feeling valued, or you're not feeling loved. I have to bring that value and love to myself. And sometimes it helps to write a letter to your little girl, your inner child, or little boy, inner child, and write out the ways that you feel, it helps you feel safe and connected in present time.
I must say, I do find that exercise, the when I look at you I see, when I look at you I feel, and then flipping it on me, when I look at me I see and I feel, even if it's something you weren't ready to admit to yourself, there is something, and it is soothing. Because sometimes when you think of soothing, we might think of like having a bubble bath or going for
green tea, which
can be very soothing. Sure. But there is something that's soothing. It's almost, it almost feels a bit like if you were cognizant as a baby being rocked, like you're parenting yourself again, or reparenting yourself in a sense when you soothe, right?
Yeah, and exactly. There's something about when you're able to rinse, to release, and also the process of when you see that in yourself, it's like you can hold yourself, or take a deep breath, or feel into your body. We're like, ooh, I need to be nurtured and nourished in places where I wasn't nurtured and nourished. And it's a different kind of, exactly like you said, soothing. It isn't like a bubble bath and a face mask, which I love me a bubble bath and actually no, I don't like bubble baths. I don't like baths. I know I'm weird, but I do like face masks.
I get bored in the bath, so
I do too. I'm like, I'm shriveling up like a prune. I don't enjoy this.
And I guess if you're doing that self-soothing effect.
Oh, there's Hi, dog. Oh, she's going down, dog. She's cute. She's really darling.
I guess if you're doing that self-soothe at that level, then actually the maybe more superficial self-care that you then do it's like a nice addition. It's not like you're relying on a shopping spree, because people will sometimes turn to self-care things that are actually not that good, because say like I know myself, if I think I've been good, I'll be like, I'm gonna splurge on this thing that I can't really afford, So like, I think if you're doing the self-soothing at that level, the rinsing, then the things you do on top of that are probably better informed, would you say?
Yeah, and I think there's something like you said that we can all kind of fall into the punishment reward model. Like if I do this thing, I deserve this, and therefore I get this thing, which is very externalized. And there's nothing wrong with getting the things. But if we're using that as a model to feel better about ourselves, it's still externalizing our self-care. And I know self-care is a word used a lot too, but this kind of self-care is the kind that nurtures, instead of going out in to feel better, I'm going in out. And when we go in out, then there's such a level of self-trust.
Yeah.
Because I am not relying on anybody else or anything outside of me to soothe me or to make me whole. That is something that is my work to do.
Yeah.
And my responsibility to myself. And I really think of self-care as collective care, because if we want to change the world out there, like we're so trained in it's like, let's go change the world and make it better. It's like, yes, let's do that. And yet you can't do that if you're not changing the internal operating system in which you are living in the world. They can be done simultaneously. It's not either or, it's and.
I totally agree. I think that can be the real shadow for yoga teachers, especially if they're teaching, multiple classes a week and burning out. I did that when I was new. It's very hard to share what you what you're meant to be sharing, but like, it's not going to come from the right place, is it? And I guess the same with your coaching work. I guess you have to set boundaries with how many people you can see. Would you say?
I set boundaries, even maybe different than that, is when I start working with a potential client, I ask them, are you willing to get uncomfortable? And are you willing, because it is different, it's the way I coach too, it's different than therapy. I think therapy is helpful to identify and understand what, and the awareness, but this is like the how. So my sort of parent company is called Home of Wholeness. So that, living in the now is you got to heal the old wounds. And to heal the old wounds, it's more than an intellectual understanding, because we hold things on such a feeling visceral level. We need to create space for our animal wounded parts of our body to rinse, so we don't keep repeating the pain. This is what we tend to do, is we'll repeat the pain in relationships, not bad or wrong. It'll have a different external look. That's why it can kind of mess with our head. It's like, well, it looks different, but I'm like, no, the energy underneath it is you're still denying your value and giving your power away. It could be in a work relationship. It could be in an intimate relationship. So that's the energy that needs integrating and owning, so that you can set a boundary around that. And it's such an internalized way of feeling content and at peace with yourself. So when I talk to potential clients, I say, are you willing to get uncomfortable? I am not a miracle worker. I can hold a strong space, and I will help pull these threads to mirror back where your blind spots are. But you have to have the courageous willingness to get uncomfortable and go into those places to do your own healing work. And that's usually the conversation I have. Are you willing? Because if you're not, that's okay. It's like, it is okay. You're like, nope, not ready to go there. And some people aren't. And a lot of people are.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Because I guess, especially for Brits, they're probably a bit less, what would be the word? Like, I feel like Americans, especially those of you from LA, are like more open to this stuff. I think I don't, you know, I'm generalizing there, but I think it's possibly in the British culture to be a little bit more suppressed about stuff. It's still working. It's still going. Do you coach, do you coach English people? Do you find a difference in how they respond to what you do from Americans, say?
That's interesting. I do. I coach British, German, American, French. Like I run the gamut. And the great thing about coaching online, I can coach people in different countries, which I do, in different time zones. I feel like each culture has its beautiful, you know, things and qualities, and it also has its challenges, and it's unique to that culture. And one isn't. I hear what you're saying. Are the Brits more suppressed? It's different. Because I have some amazing British clients who are they're like, bring it on. I feel like there's this like, let's do this. And then, but I've had a couple like, nope, this is too much. You know, so it kind of runs the gamut. And same thing with Americans, and especially from California, because I'm from California, people can seem really open, like I do all the things, and I meditate and I drink green juices. And yeah, it can be really stubborn and going into those places that are keeping them stuck in their patterns of repeating. Because I coach therapists too. I mean, I have therapists that I coach. So just because somebody is in that line of work, we all have and yoga teachers. I've mentored and coached, obviously, yoga teachers. We want to help other people, and it's coming from such a beautiful place of intention. And yet we can't help. It's not our job to fix or heal anybody else. It's our job to do that work and hold that space and facilitate it. So I think it really depends. I'm going to say more on the person.
Of course, actually, that makes so much sense. And just aside from, I mean, with the rinsing work, obviously there's the physical and the right rinse. Is this something you make time to do a certain number of times a week, or do you do it as and when you need it?
That's a really good question. I do a non-negotiable check-in every day. Like, I just think even people say I don't have the time. I'm like, you don't need to spend an hour. A check-in can be, you know, 2 minutes of breath or a 5-minute meditation or writing down. Sometimes I just need to write down my grievances. Like it's not meant to be pretty writing. I just do ugly, messy, release what's coming out. And sometimes a lot of wisdom drops in. I'm like, oh, I make connections. The physical rinse I do when I feel angry or I feel triggered, or sometimes when I feel flat. Every once in a while I'm like, I feel heavy. I feel like there's a suppression, and there's no obvious logical reason, but maybe I'm just feeling the collective sadness or hurt that's going on in the world. I give myself permission to rinse that, and where it's in my body, so I'm not holding on to it, and I always feel lighter. And I think that just helps give each of ourselves a way to check. I think checking in every day to what you need and what you're feeling, and really attuning to your heart and your truth is such an important practice, whatever that looks like for you.
And if someone was sort of approaching rinsing for the first time, and maybe their in was through writing, I guess it's pretty free, isn't it? But are there some kind of prompts that people could use? Like, would it be like, how would one start? Just like even a few words or a few sentences, how could one get into the flow of their feelings? Like, what words prompts could work?
Well, I love the word fuck.
Me too.
It's just, it's not a bad word, whatever that is. It's just a big feeling word. It's like, fuck this. This is hard. Or I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling like, go with feeling words. Or I'm feeling dysregulated. Or I'm feeling sad. And this really, like, if that's what you're feeling, and sometimes you wake up and you're feeling joyful and like, I'm feeling joyful. I'm feeling happy. This is exciting. Like, let your feelings are like a school of fish. Like when you see fish in the ocean and there's a whole school and they just move back and forth and they move back and forth, they move together. When we allow ourselves to feel our feelings without shutting them down or judging them. Because a lot of times in the society or world that we live in, it's like anger is bad and sadness is weak. So we shut it down. We're like, I need to be happy. That's the good vibes only, like light and love brigade that shuts down the other stuff as being bad. I'm like, no, there are no bad vibes. There's just vibes that need rinsing. So let yourself have a safe space to let them move so we don't shut ourselves down.
Because no one ever has to read what you write. I mean,
no. This is
no.
This is never for anybody to read except for yourself. Right? It's an exercise, and like, we all get triggered, or people that upset us or throw us off our center. That's a really helpful tool to do a projection exercise. Like,
could you explain like what's meant by projection, just for some people might not know?
Okay, let me ask you, who in your life can throw you off center or make you feel like, fuck you, or I'm angry, or like, oh, break up your part?
Oh gosh.
You don't have to give me details.
Sometimes there'll be someone who walks into a class and for some reasons, but mostly it's usually a man.
Okay.
I'm just being completely honest here, will just piss me off. And
okay. I love that. So you're not denying. See, if you went, okay, this is a great example. Because if you were like, oh, I'm a yoga teacher, I should be above this, I shouldn't. I'm like, first of all, that doesn't work, because there's no should or shouldn't. Don't shit on that. It's like, I am annoyed and angry. You have enough regulation to go, I can still teach this class and go home.
Yeah.
But later you go, oh, I need to rinse that, because it's not about the guy. It's what the guy represents. And it doesn't mean that he isn't acting, like a fool. I mean, just because somebody's doing something, it's like, but when we get off our center because of that person, it's like the metaphorical flu I talk about in my work. If somebody gives you the flu, and this is long before COVID, if somebody gives you the metaphorical flu, you can be really pissed off and upset that they gave you the flu. You're like, fuck you, I got this flu from you. And yet you have to heal the flu. Once it is in your system, you have to heal your flu. So the rinsing is like the part where you would go home and write in your book or your journal. It's like, fuck you, dude, in class or whatever it is. When I look at you, like, don't pretend it's not there. It's like, you thought it, you felt it, it's life.
Yeah.
If you don't clean that energy up, you got to clean up your side of the street. It will come out again in funky ways, probably when you're teaching another class, or somebody like that person pulls up in your hemisphere, in your force field. So it's like, just be honest. Okay, so, and again, this is not to give to anybody, it's all private. You're right. When I look at you, I see this, I don't know, whatever that is. When I look at you, I see an arrogant, mean, checked out dude. I'm just making shit up or whatever. Whatever you see, that's bringing you this upset. And when I look at you, I feel whatever, not listened to, unheard, you're shut down, whatever that thing is. And then it's really helpful, I think, for some people to read it exactly how you wrote it, from your inner child to your adult self.
Oh, yes.
So from like little L to big L. Dear big L, when I look at you, I see somebody who shuts me down and doesn't hear what I have to say, and you're really arrogant and blah, blah, blah. And dear big L, when I look at you, I feel not seen and loved, and whatever those are. And it's like, oh, because oftentimes there's a part in our little self that didn't get those things, and we're wanting this out. And healers of all sorts, whatever that means, teachers, therapists, coaches, we have to be really on top of our own healing work so that we're not transferring that out to other people. Right?
100%.
So then you could do the flip also. I think it's such a good one. Then you could flip it. It's like, dear me, when I look at me, I see this. And when I look at me, I feel. And then after that, write out, I just learned. It's all about, if you can just go, get out of the shame struggle, because it breaks shame. It's like, oh, what is this helping me to see? I just learned, and this makes me feel. Oh, I just learned when I'm off center and I'm around this type of energy of a man, I'm wanting to be seen and acknowledged. And when I'm not, I shut myself down and go small. What's that about? And this makes me feel outside my body. So what do I need to get inside of my body? Right? So it helps make that shift. Oh, that's nice. Sometimes you can't control those external environments.
Great example.
But exactly. But it's so true. We cannot
Yeah.
change the other people,
Mhm.
but you can heal what's inside of you in that metaphorical flu.
Yeah.
So the next time you're around that type of energy, it's not going to aggravate you as much.
Mm.
It'll be more like Teflon. It'll slide off rather than Velcro.
Yeah.
Because when it sticks, you just got to know it's your work.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned this earlier, but I find it amazing how actually when I do some of that writing stuff myself, some inspiration for something will come up, or I'll like access something that's
Yeah.
I'll sorry. I'll get a new idea that comes out of it that has not necessarily anything to do with that, just something that I can work on, or I don't know. It's interesting how fertile it can be when you do that stuff.
Well, and what I love what you said, how fertile that fertile.
Sorry,
How fertile it can be. Because when you pull that, it's like you're uprooting something in your own system and you're going to understand it rather than shaming and shutting it down. It's like, welcome all vibes.
Yeah.
Is the working title of my book. All vibes welcome.
It's like, I was just gonna ask you.
So my book that I'm working on right now is called All Vibes Welcome. Not just the good ones, the bad ones, all. Because
I can't wait.
it's sort of my tagline. No. It's like, you got to get ugly to know your beauty. Like,
Yeah.
The ugly shit is where a lot of the beauty is. So you take some of the stuff that we've deemed ugly, you uproot it, you understand it, and then you plant a seed. It is fertile ground that composts new ways of being in relationship with yourself and new ways of being in relationship with other people. So we're less invested in their opinion of us. We depersonalize other people's projections. We depersonalize other people's behaviors. And again, it doesn't mean that this guy in the class isn't acting like a damn fool. He may be. And it's not either, it's and. And if I'm off my center, then I've allowed him to infiltrate my system, and now I got to do the rinsing because it's hijacked me. So I got to come back and own that, so that the next time I'm in that dynamic, it's not going to take me off my center.
And you say for healers and teachers and whatnot, but this could apply for anyone working in an environment of their company that they work at, a family member, people they're in relationship with. It just, everyone could benefit from the rinse.
Oh my gosh. Everything in life is relationship. And it starts with the relationship we have with ourselves. And we need to get really honest with when we're off center in our relationships within. So that shifts and changes our relationships we have with other people. And, I know that's a big ask, because a lot of times how we were modeled in relationships in our family of origin, we have limited sometimes resources. There's bigger traumas, smaller traumas. And so to do that kind of healing work it's courageous work. And it's also the thing that shifts, how we go in the world in relationship, whether it's at work, with our families, with our friends, with our loved ones, with our neighbors down the street. Like, everything's relationship.
Absolutely. And do you have, just going a little bit more, we've, the rinsing is a regular practice for you. What are your kind of other little, just maybe day to day, a few times a week, things that you do that bring you a sense of wellness that you like to maintain? It could be like walking the dogs, or
Of course, I have 2 pit bull rescues that were
Willow and Linus.
Willow and Linus. They came from, one was found in a dumpster. People always ask me, what kind of dogs are they? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
One was found in a dumpster in downtown LA, and one was found under a house in Santa Monica. And they are my most just beautiful creatures that I'm honored to be in relationship with.
It's a little snout.
There's a little snout. Oh,
She's like, you're talking, my ears are burning.
I love it. So walking the dogs is a joy. And also, because I was a dancer, I still am a dancer. So for me, dance and movement, so sometimes the physical rinse and sometimes shaking and dancing is such a catharsis. To be in, I feel like wellness is wholeness, and to really inhabit our bodies fully. To be in joy is such a rebellious act, to reclaim your joy, to be in your body. That nobody needs, you don't need a yoga mat, you don't need fancy clothes, you don't need anything to reclaim the joy of being in your body.
I love that. What is your go-to dance track?
Oh, there's so many. Oh my God. Okay, this is gonna sound really cheesy, but I do love California love because when I miss California, I go to I go to some California love. It just like gets me in the zone.
Yeah. Hi, Willa. Yeah. Oh, that's so great. And because a lot of people will say sometimes if they'll say like, oh, I can't meditate, I can't sit still, and I often say, well, you don't have to, because as you said, it with rather than meditation, you can have like an integration, and I guess that's through dance and just losing yourself in something, and also being in your body.
The joys of living in London in proximity to drills. Proximity to drills.
So yeah, I think like having dancing, and also you're obviously you come from a professional dance background, but people can just cut loose, can't they? They don't have to be.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we can all dance, we can all sing. We don't need to. It's not. That's the thing. None of it's a performance, and I think so many of us get self-conscious of. Well, you can hear this, I don't want to go to yoga because I'm not good at yoga. I'm like, you do not need to be good. It's not about being good. That's more of the old system saying you need to perform and get it right. This is about being real and honest and expression. Our ability to express ourselves is so big and vast, but we have so many restrictions based on our belief systems. And that's why I think the rinsing is so helpful to rinse some of those belief systems and get back into the attunement of listening to our bodies, like really feeling what our bodies need in present time. And if that's dancing, if that's walking, if that's putting your hands on your heart and your belly and listening to your breath. Breathing is really helpful because it's that constant companion that gets you back into your center.
Of course.
So, I think that's such a personal, some people love to play tennis or golf, which I don't get, but I don't know. Who am I to say, like, whatever that thing is that gets you into the zone of being present with yourself,
And are there any have you noticed any wellness trends that you think are actually probably harmful? Just for fun.
Oh, that is a loaded question. I could have I'm going to be as honest as I can. Okay, without being judgy. I know, because I really don't mean it from a judgmental place.
No.
What I do find harmful is the emphasis on bendy, thin bodies as being the bodies that are desirable in yoga. And I feel like as much awareness as there is about diversity, I don't think that that's being represented that well out there. And I think some of it feels very performative. And look, if it's performative and it starts to shift the trend, cool. And yet we have to get more authentic. And I think even what I see in yoga studios, it's like, the leg over the head or, certain clothing brands. There's one particular, I used to leather stuff. I will never wear it again because that's what it promotes. I've seen people, go from not doing yoga to becoming a yoga teacher and then going into fancy poses. And now they've got hundreds of thousands of followers and they have no substance in what they're teaching. And I've seen teachers who have been teaching for 20 years because they don't have a big Instagram following or they don't do sexy yoga, don't have the followers. So is it really the teachers or the people that are creating the problem? Partially, but it's also, we have to be accountable as the public who's seeking that. Is like, do you want just performative, fancy, acro-y kind of bodies when you can just go watch Cirque du Soleil? Is that, because that's not really what yoga's about. Yoga's about wholeness and union and unpacking what's in your own unconscious to be more in deep relationship with whatever that truth is for you. And the physical postures give you space and time to be in your body and with your breath, but it's not about a performance. And it looks so performance-y right now in the wellness trend of yoga. And I think that that's harmful because it reinforces those standards of diet culture, going outside of yourself, looking for external validation, when that's the opposite of what wholeness and wellness is really about.
I think social media as well, like so often if I do it, I'll take a photo, now it's a video because it's a reel. Actually that's kind of why now when I post, I try and make it, just personally, I try and do more like this is how this could help you with this, rather than just look at me doing a whatever. But I used to do that a lot. And I remember I would hold a pose that was barely possible in my body, but I would want to catch the photo of it, and then I'd feel like shit because I'd like put my hip out or something from because I so wanted the image, and I wanted to show that I was a good yogi because I could do this. But then it's not real, because behind that was me probably not having warmed up properly, probably not breathing, very conscious of how I looked. So I do think social media, for all that it has its positives, I do think that it, you know, when it comes to that glorification of the poses.
Yeah, and like, I'm not perfect. I've done glorification of poses in my past too. And here's the thing: is we do want to celebrate our bodies and the beauty of our physical bodies. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But when that becomes more of what is emphasized and accentuated without the balance of the inner work and the philosophy, especially in yoga, and the deep awareness and reflection and courageous introspection that comes with it, then that's when I think it becomes problematic.
And I suppose then this is how you're to, well, obviously you have many things that you offer, but I guess that's the intersection, if you like, between your coaching and your yoga teaching. That kind of, and you bring, what I love about your classes and what kind of, and I remember so clearly the first class I took with you, because you brought that. You were talking about stuff that I was like, oh my God. And you were talking about yoga philosophy, but you weren't talking about it in a kind of esoteric, far away, this is just a bit of decoration. You were bringing it into the, I was feeling it in my body. I was like, wow. Yes. So that's my memory of, and I've been with you ever since.
Oh, I love that. I remember that initial connection. And I think a lot of people say that do like my classes, is that it feels like I'm sharing the philosophy in an embodied way. And that is true. I am. I'm not an esoteric, this is what you should be doing or shouldn't be doing. I've channeled this through my own process, and it's really helped me feel more at peace with who I am and that contentment. So here I'm offering this, take what resonates, leave behind what doesn't. And that's part of me also doing my inner work of accepting that I'm not going to be for everybody. Like, I'm so okay with that. I do what I do in my authentic, embodied way, and it's going to resonate with some people and some people it won't. But that's the beauty of life, is like we'll find and we'll attract, and trusting that evolution in that process.
And it's so worth, especially for yoga teachers that listen to this, who are maybe struggling to kind of with that thing of needing to please everyone. You can't. And actually, with how many yoga teachers there are now, and just people offering, wellness, coaching, it's good to be not for everyone, because then you want to have the people that who are for you, or you are for, then you'll have them with you, rather than trying to just dip your toe in every, I don't know what the expression is, but
I know. Well, yeah, because that's just people pleasing, and people pleasing is performance, and that's suffering. So yoga is an antidote for suffering. It's like yoga says, you're going to go through pain, honey. You're going to go through struggles. You're going to go through some shit in life, but you do the work, you get the growth, and if you get the growth, you get the inner peace. But there's no shortcut. And if you're trying to please people, then you are outside of your body, and you externalize your worth and validation. And yeah, it's a journey, it's like when I first started teaching yoga, it took time. I was insecure. I didn't trust my voice, but that's all part of the initiation. And you don't get to trusting your voice and really embodying that without going through the fears and the insecurities. So I say, honor those moments of where you have to, the deep dive is where the joy is. I feel like the deeper you're willing to go. I remember somebody said once, like, that's so heavy. We can't go too deep because it's going to get heavy. I'm like, no, what's heavy is like ignoring the deep and swimming on the surface. You go deep and you go down and you pull up. There's just like these pearls of wisdom. And then you come back to the surface and you splash around and you have it and sell it. Like, I say this to everybody that I work with, you got to celebrate yourself. Celebrate that you're doing this work. Celebrate that you're courageous. Even when you're going through the tears or the hardship, celebrate that you are, allowing yourself to be in the process of growth. because that celebration will allow you to be more in a state of joy. And you know, in the yoga philosophy, joy isn't about being happy. Joy can hold space for sorrow and sadness as a tool for knowing the depth of our humanity and our compassion. So joy is so much more spacious. And I think the celebration keeps us connected to that joy, even when we're going through big changes and transformation.
And it takes away that thing of you can be happy when you get to this stage, rather than you can enjoy yourself now.
Yeah, and happy is fleeting. You're not going to be happy all the time. You're not going to feel good vibes all the time. You're going to feel all the vibes, and all the vibes are teachers if you welcome them as information to understand and integrate your wisdom and your truth.
Awesome. Well, this has been absolutely lovely, Mia. You're full of wisdom, and you know, I've really thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. So thank you for coming along to chat.
You're so welcome, and I thoroughly enjoy always talking to you, and I wish you all the best.